1.1 The Lifeblood, Flooding, Fertile Lands, and the Creation of Agriculture. Imagine a vast, scorching desert, an unforgiving expanse of sand and rock under a relentless sun. Now, picture a verdant ribbon, impossibly green and teeming with life, weaving its way through this arid wasteland. This is the Nile, and it is no exaggeration to say that without it, ancient Egypt, as we know it, would never have existed. The Nile was not merely a river, it was the very pulse of a civilization, dictating its rhythms, sustaining its people, and shaping its unique worldview. Each year, typically from June to September, the Nile underwent its miraculous inundation. Swollen by seasonal rains in the Ethiopian highlands and melting snows from the mountains of the Moon, the traditional source of the White Nile, the river would overflow its banks, submerging the adjacent floodplains. This wasn't a destructive deluge, but a benevolent blessing. As the waters receded, they left behind a rich black silt, a natural fertilizer deposited over millennia. This annual renewal transformed the parched earth into incredibly fertile land, ready for cultivation. Early settlers, migrating from the encroaching Sahara, quickly recognized the unparalleled potential of this fertile strip. They transitioned from nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyles to settled agricultural communities, a pivotal step in the development of human civilization. The predictable cycle of the inundation allowed for systematic farming. Wheat and barley, the staples of the Egyptian diet, flourished, providing a surplus that supported a growing population and, crucially, allowed for specialization of labor beyond mere subsistence. This surplus also fostered trade, laying the groundwork for complex economic systems. Beyond agriculture, the Nile provided an abundance of other vital resources. Its waters were rich with fish, a crucial protein source. Papyrus reeds, growing thickly along its banks, were harvested to create everything from boats and ropes to baskets and, most famously, the writing material that would preserve Egyptian thought for millennia. Clay from the riverbanks was used for pottery and construction. The sheer diversity and reliability of these resources, all clustered around the river, created an unparalleled environment for early human development. The Nile wasn't just a physical phenomenon, it was a deeply spiritual entity, often deified as the god Hapi, whose annual arrival was greeted with gratitude and elaborate ritual. Upper versus Lower Egypt, Early Divisions and Unification. Despite the unifying presence of the Nile, early Egypt was not a monolithic entity. It was geographically and, for much of its early history, politically divided into two distinct regions, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. These designations, counterintuitively to modern sensibilities, refer to the river's flow. Upper Egypt stretched from the First Cataract, near modern Aswan, northward to the Fayum region. It was a narrower, more rocky valley, characterized by its elongated shape and closer proximity to the desert cliffs. Its symbols often included the white crown, the lotus plant, and the vulture goddess Nekbet of El-Kab, symbolizing protection and sovereignty. Lower Egypt encompassed the vast, fertile delta region, where the Nile fanned out into numerous branches before emptying into the Mediterranean Sea. This was a broad, marshy, and incredibly fertile area. Its symbols were the red crown, the papyrus plant, and the cobra goddess Wadjet of Buto, representing royalty and fierce protection. These geographical differences fostered distinct cultural identities and, inevitably, political rivalries. Archaeological evidence from the pre-dynastic period shows numerous independent chieftaincies, or proto-kingdoms, vying for control over resources and trade routes within their respective regions. The eventual unification of these two lands under a single ruler was a monumental achievement, marking the true birth of dynastic Egypt. It was a process likely involving both conquest and diplomacy, culminating in the establishment of a centralized government capable of managing the entire Nile Valley. This dualistic concept, the two lands, remained a powerful ideological force throughout Egyptian history, with pharaohs consistently adopting titles and iconography that emphasized their role as rulers of both Upper and Lower Egypt. The merging of the white and red crowns into the pishent, double crown, became the ultimate symbol of this enduring unity. Pre-dynastic cultures, Naqada, Hierakonpolis, and the dawn of complexity. Before the grand dynasties of pharaohs, massive pyramids, and intricate temples, a series of vibrant and increasingly complex cultures flourished along the Nile. These are collectively known as the pre-dynastic period, spanning roughly from 5000 BCE to 3100 BCE, and they lay the essential groundwork for the fully fledged civilization that would follow. Among the most significant of these was the Naqada culture, named after the archaeological site where it was first identified. Emerging around 4000 BCE, the Naqada culture went through several phases, Naqada 1, 2, and 3, demonstrating a clear progression in social organization, technology, and artistic expression. Early Naqada settlements revealed sophisticated pottery, finely worked stone tools, and rudimentary copper implements. As the culture evolved, particularly during Naqada II, also known as the Gurzean period, we see signs of greater social stratification, larger, more elaborate burials for elites, evidence of increasing trade with regions as far as Mesopotamia, and the emergence of distinct craft specialization. Hierakonpolis, ancient Nekhen, the city of the falcon, was another crucial center, particularly during the late pre-dynastic period. It grew into one of the largest and most important urban centers of its time, possibly housing a population of 10,000 or more. Here, archaeologists have uncovered tantalizing evidence of royal residences, ceremonial complexes, and industrial areas for brewing beer and working copper. The site provides a window into the increasing wealth, administrative capacity, and ceremonial practices that would characterize dynastic Egypt. The presence of elaborate painted tombs, such as the famous Tomb 100, depicting boats, hunting scenes, and ritualistic combat, points to a developing cosmology and an emerging artistic canon. The transition to Naqada III, often called Dynasty Zero, saw a rapid acceleration of political unification, centered around powerful local rulers. This era witnessed the development of standardized iconography, the first rudimentary hieroglyphic writing on labels and seals, and the construction of proto-palaces and fortified towns. These pre-dynastic cultures, especially Hierakonpolis, fostered the political, economic, and ideological structures that allowed the first pharaohs to successfully consolidate power and usher in the early dynastic period. They were the crucible in which the essential elements of Egyptian civilization were forged, piece by careful piece. 1.4. Early writing. The invention of hieroglyphs and its significance. The invention of writing is a landmark moment in human history, marking the transition from prehistory to history. In Egypt, this monumental development manifested in the beautiful and complex system of hieroglyphics. While the exact origins are debated, early forms of hieroglyphic writing appear around 3200 to 3100 BCE, coinciding with the late pre-dynastic period and the unification of Egypt. The word hieroglyphic itself comes from the Greek hieros, meaning sacred, and glyphene, to carve, literally meaning sacred carved letters, a testament to their enduring visual power and the awe they inspired. Unlike Mesopotamian cuneiform, which evolved from pictograms into abstract wedge shapes, Egyptian hieroglyphs largely retained their pictorial qualities throughout their long history. This often leads to the misconception that they are purely picture writing. In reality, hieroglyphs functioned on multiple levels. Logograms, symbols representing entire words, for example, a circle with a dot in the middle representing sun. Phonograms, symbols representing sounds, either single consonants or combinations of consonants, for example, the owl representing the M sound. Vowels were generally not written. Determinatives, unpronounced signs placed at the end of a word to clarify its meaning, especially for words that looked or sounded similar. For example, a scroll symbol after a word would indicate that the word was abstract or related to writing. Initially, hieroglyphs were used for administrative purposes, labeling goods, recording names, and indicating ownership. However, their significance quickly expanded to monumental inscriptions on temple walls, tombs, and stelae, preserving the deeds of pharaohs, the prayers of priests, and the wisdom of the gods. The act of writing itself was imbued with sacred power. The god Thoth, often depicted with the head of an ibis or baboon, was revered as the divine scribe and inventor of writing. The invention of hieroglyphs was transformative. It allowed for centralized administration. Complex states require efficient record-keeping for taxes, resources, and decrees. Historical record. The ability to record events, king lists, and biographies provided a tangible connection to the past and future. Religious expression. Sacred texts, funerary spells, and divine narratives could be preserved and transmitted. Cultural identity. Hieroglyphs became a powerful symbol of Egyptian civilization, beautiful and profound. While cumbersome for everyday use, leading to the development of more cursive scripts like hieratic for administrative and literary purposes, hieroglyphs remained the formal script for monumental inscriptions for over 3 millennia. Their decipherment in the 19th century, thanks to the Rosetta Stone, unlocked the voices of ancient Egypt, allowing us to read their history, beliefs, and aspirations directly from their own words. Part 1. The Genesis of a Civilization, from Nomads to Kingdoms. Chapter 2. The Archaic Period and Early Dynasties, Forging the State. The verdant ribbon of the Nile, nurtured by its annual inundation, had provided the foundation. Pre-dynastic cultures had laid the groundwork for complex societies, refining agriculture, developing crafts, and experimenting with early forms of administration. Now the stage was set for the pivotal transformation, the emergence of a unified state under the authority of powerful kings. The period known as the Archaic Period, roughly 3100 to 2686 BCE, encompassing the First and Second Dynasties, represents this crucial phase where the disparate elements of pre-dynastic Egypt coalesced into the bedrock of one of history's most enduring civilizations. Narmer and the Unification, Myth versus Reality. The traditional narrative of Egyptian unification often centers on a single heroic figure, King Narmer. His triumph is dramatically depicted on the famous Narmer palette, one of the most significant artifacts from early dynastic Egypt, discovered at Hierakonpolis. This ceremonial palette, carved from siltstone, presents a powerful visual story. On one side, Narmer, wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt, smites a kneeling enemy. On the reverse, he wears the red crown of Lower Egypt, inspecting rows of decapitated foes. This imagery has long been interpreted as a literal depiction of Narmer conquering Lower Egypt and uniting the two lands. However, modern Egyptology increasingly views the unification as a more complex and protracted process than a single decisive battle. While Narmer, who some scholars equate with Menes, the legendary first king mentioned by later Egyptian historians like Manetho, certainly played a crucial role. It's likely he was the culmination of a longer period of conflict, negotiation, and cultural assimilation that had been underway for centuries during the late pre-dynastic Naqada III period. The reality of unification likely involved a blend of military conquest by powerful Upper Egyptian rulers expanding northward, alongside economic and cultural integration. Control over trade routes, access to valuable resources like copper and turquoise, and the strategic advantage of controlling the fertile delta region were all powerful motivators. Narmer's importance probably lies not just in his military prowess, but in his ability to symbolically and administratively consolidate these gains, establishing a new capital at Memphis, likely founded by Menes or Narmer, a strategic point at the junction of Upper and Lower Egypt. The Narmer palette, therefore, should perhaps be seen less as a journalistic account and more as a powerful piece of royal propaganda, establishing the iconography of kingship and the pharaoh's role as the uniter and maintainer of cosmic order, Ma'at, through the subjugation of chaos. It cemented the ideological foundation for all future pharaohs, depicting the king as a divine warrior, essential for the well-being of the two lands. The first pharaohs, Hor-Aha, Deer, and the consolidation of power. With unification achieved, the challenge for the early pharaohs of the First Dynasty was to solidify their control and build a lasting state apparatus. This task fell to a succession of powerful rulers who, though their individual reigns are often shrouded in archaeological mystery, laid the administrative and cultural groundwork for the Old Kingdom's splendor. Hor-Aha, often considered Narmer's successor, is a prime example. His name, meaning fighting hawk, suggests a continuing military role, perhaps quelling lingering rebellions or securing borders. Archaeological finds attributed to him, particularly his elaborate tomb at Abydos, point to the increasing wealth and sophistication of the royal court. He is also associated with early attempts to expand Egyptian influence into Nubia. Following Hor-Aha, kings like Deir and Den continued the work of consolidation. Their reigns saw the further development of centralized administration, with royal officials overseeing agriculture, taxation, and monumental construction. Evidence suggests these pharaohs sent expeditions to mine valuable resources like copper in Sinai, and conducted trade with the Levant, expanding Egypt's economic reach. The royal tombs of these early kings at Abydos became increasingly elaborate, featuring not only the king's burial chamber, but also subsidiary burials of retainers and servants, intended to accompany the pharaoh into the afterlife. This grim practice, though eventually phased out, underscores the absolute power of the early pharaohs and the belief in their divine status. The Second Dynasty built upon these foundations, though it seems to have been a period marked by internal strife and religious shifts, particularly a rivalry between the cults of the gods Horus and Seth. Kings like Per-Ibsen and Khâsekhemoui navigated these challenges, demonstrating the resilience and adaptability of the early Egyptian state. By the end of the Archaic period, the concept of a singular, divinely sanctioned ruler governing a unified Egypt was firmly established, paving the way for the grand achievements of the Old Kingdom. 2.3. Abydos and Saqqara, Early Royal Burial Sites. The reverence for the afterlife and the paramount importance of the pharaoh's journey into eternity were central tenets of Egyptian belief from the earliest times. This is nowhere more evident than in the elaborate burial practices and monumental architecture developed at key royal necropolises, Abydos and Saqqara. These sites were not merely cemeteries. They were sacred landscapes designed to facilitate the pharaoh's eternal existence and underscore their divine authority. Abydos, located in Upper Egypt, holds profound religious significance. It was considered a prime burial place due to its association with the god Osiris, lord of the underworld and rebirth. From the pre-dynastic period, it served as a major cult center and became the primary royal burial ground for the kings of the First and Second dynasties. The royal tombs at Abydos were grand structures, consisting of a large, underground burial chamber often built of mud brick, surrounded by smaller subsidiary graves for sacrificed courtiers and provisions. The funerary enclosures, immense mud brick walled areas above ground, likely served as locations for cultic rituals performed after the king's burial. These massive structures, though now largely ruined, speak volumes about the scale of royal resources and the centralized power required for their construction. While Abydos retained its religious importance, Saqqara, situated near the new capital of Memphis at the junction of Upper and Lower Egypt, emerged as a complementary and arguably more politically significant royal burial site. By the end of the First Dynasty, and increasingly in the Second, many pharaohs maintained two sets of funerary monuments, one at Abydos, perhaps for religious or ancestral ties, and another at Saqqara, closer to the administrative center and projecting royal power over the north. The non-royal elite, as well as some kings of the First and Second dynasties, were also buried at Saqqara. This site would become particularly famous for its monumental mastabas and, most significantly, the groundbreaking step pyramid complex of Djoser in the Third Dynasty, which truly revolutionized royal burial architecture and shifted the focus of royal power firmly to the north. These dual burial traditions underscore the complex interplay of religious belief, political strategy, and practical considerations that shaped early Egyptian state formation. 2.4. Mastabas, precursors to the pyramids. Before the iconic pyramids pierced the desert sky, the preferred and most architecturally significant type of tomb for both royalty and high-ranking officials during the Archaic and early Old Kingdom periods was the mastaba. The term mastaba itself is Arabic, meaning stone bench, and refers to the rectangular, flat-topped, sloping-sided superstructure that resembles the benches outside traditional Egyptian houses. The evolution of the mastaba demonstrates a clear progression in funerary architecture and a deepening understanding of the requirements for eternal life. Early mastabas were simple mud brick structures, but over time they grew in size, complexity, and the richness of their internal decoration. A typical mastaba consisted of two main parts. The substructure. This was an underground burial chamber, often accessed by a vertical shaft or sloping passage. This is where the deceased's body, usually encased in a coffin, and their grave goods were placed. The chamber was sealed after burial to protect the occupant and their possessions. The superstructure. This was the visible, above-ground rectangular mud brick, then stone building. It served several crucial functions. Protection. Its massive bulk helped to secure the burial chamber below. Ritual space. It contained a chapel or offering chamber where family members could leave food and other provisions for the deceased's ka, or life force, to sustain them in the afterlife. False door. A key feature was the false door carved into one of the walls of the offering chamber. This was not a real door, but a symbolic portal through which the ka of the deceased could pass between the land of the living and the realm of the dead to receive offerings. Serdab. Some mastabas also included a serdab, a sealed chamber containing a statue of the deceased, allowing the ka to inhabit it and receive offerings if the body was damaged. This design of the mastaba reflected an emerging cosmology where the physical preservation of the body and the continuous provision of offerings were paramount for the deceased's eternal well-being. The progression from simple earthen mounds to these elaborate mud brick, then stone structures illustrates a growing mastery of architectural techniques and a profound investment in the afterlife. They served as direct architectural ancestors to the pyramids, representing the crucial step in the monumentalization of royal burials that would define the Old Kingdom. Each layer of the step pyramid, in essence, is a mastaba piled on top of another, a clear visual lineage from the simple bench to the towering symbol of a divine king. Part 2. The Age of Giants. Old Kingdom Splendor. The Archaic period had forged the state, but the Old Kingdom, c. 2686 to 2181 BCE, encompassing the 3rd through 6th dynasties, would elevate it to unprecedented heights. This was the era that gave birth to the enduring image of ancient Egypt, the age of colossal pyramids, the all-powerful god-king, and a civilization at the zenith of its early administrative and artistic prowess. It was a time of immense stability, centralized power, and artistic innovation that would set the standards for nearly 3 millennia of Egyptian history. The foundations were laid. Now the monumental structures would rise, echoing the eternal ambition of the pharaohs.
The Old Kingdom was not merely an age of architectural wonders. It was fundamentally defined by a powerful and intricate ideology of kingship. At its heart was the concept of the pharaoh as a god-king, a living deity on earth whose very existence and actions were indispensable for the well-being of Egypt and the cosmic order itself. This belief system permeated every aspect of Egyptian society, shaping politics, religion, art, and the daily lives of its people. Understanding the divine nature of the pharaoh is key to comprehending the colossal scale of Old Kingdom achievements, from the pyramids to the elaborate state bureaucracy. 3.1. Divine Kingship. Pharaoh's role as mediator between gods and men. From the earliest dynasties, the Egyptian king was no ordinary mortal ruler. He was the earthly incarnation of Horus, the falcon god associated with kingship, the sky, and protection. Upon his death, the pharaoh would become Osiris, lord of the underworld, and his successor would assume the mantle of the living Horus. This continuous cycle reinforced the eternal nature of kingship, transcending individual reigns. This divine status placed the pharaoh in a unique and indispensable position. He was the supreme mediator between the gods and humankind. Unlike other civilizations where priests often served as intermediaries, in Egypt, the pharaoh was theoretically the chief priest of every cult in the land. He was depicted on temple walls making offerings directly to the gods, not merely representing the people, but acting as the sole authorized channel through which divine blessings flowed to Egypt, and, in turn, through which human reverence ascended to the heavens. This role extended far beyond religious ritual. The pharaoh was believed to possess Heka, magic or divine power, enabling him to control the natural world. It was his presence that ensured the annual flooding of the Nile, the fertility of the land, the abundance of harvests, and the prosperity of the nation. His divine power also protected Egypt from its enemies, ensuring victory in battle and stability within its borders. Because of this divine connection, the pharaoh's will was absolute. He owned all the land, commanded all resources, and held ultimate authority over every inhabitant. His decrees were seen as divine pronouncements, and his authority was unquestionable. This ideology of divine kingship provided the ultimate justification for the immense concentration of wealth, labor, and power required to build the pyramids and maintain the vast administrative apparatus of the Old Kingdom. The monumental tombs were not simply burial sites, they were eternal homes for a god, ensuring his continued ability to intercede on behalf of Egypt from the afterlife. 3.2. Ma'at. Cosmic order, justice, and the pharaoh's responsibility. While the pharaoh's power was absolute, it was not arbitrary. It was fundamentally bound by the concept of Ma'at, a profoundly important and multifaceted principle in ancient Egyptian thought. Ma'at represented cosmic order, truth, justice, balance, morality, and harmony. She was often personified as a goddess, depicted as a winged woman wearing an ostrich feather on her head. The pharaoh's primary responsibility, above all else, was to uphold and maintain Ma'at. This was his divine mandate. Every action, every decision, and every ritual performed by the king was directed towards preserving this delicate balance in the cosmos and on earth. If Ma'at was allowed to falter, chaos, isfet, would ensue, leading to famine, invasion, disorder, and the wrath of the gods. Upholding Ma'at meant administering justice, ensuring fair laws and unbiased judgments for all citizens, providing for the people, organizing the distribution of resources, managing agricultural cycles, and preventing famine, defending the borders, protecting Egypt from foreign invaders to maintain internal security, building temples and performing rituals, ensuring the gods were properly appeased and honored, thereby guaranteeing their continued favor and the stability of the natural world, e.g., the Nile flood. Maintaining ethical conduct. The pharaoh's personal conduct was expected to embody the principles of truth and justice. The concept of Ma'at served as both a justification for the pharaoh's immense power and a moral framework for its exercise. It instilled a sense of purpose and responsibility in the ruler, reminding him that his divine authority was granted for the specific purpose of ensuring harmony. The pyramids themselves can be seen as monumental expressions of Ma'at, perfectly proportioned, eternally stable structures that brought order to the landscape and guaranteed the immortal journey of the pharaoh, thus securing the cosmic balance for all of Egypt. 3.3. Royal iconography. Crowns, scepters, and symbols of authority. To visually articulate the pharaoh's divine status and his role in maintaining Ma'at, a rich and consistent system of royal iconography was developed during the Archaic period and solidified during the Old Kingdom. These symbols were not mere decoration, they were powerful emblems that communicated the king's identity, his divine lineage, and his command over the two lands. Every element, from the headwear to the items held in his hand, carried profound meaning. Key elements of royal iconography included crowns, white crown, headjet, tall, conical, and associated with Upper Egypt. Red crown, deshret, flat-topped with a coiled protrusion, associated with Lower Egypt. Double crown, psent, the combination of the white and red crowns, symbolizing the unification of the two lands and the pharaoh's dominion over both. This was the most potent symbol of kingship. Nemes headdress, a striped headcloth, often seen with the uraeus, worn by pharaohs, signifying royalty and power. Scepters and staves. Crook, heka, a shepherd's crook, symbolizing the pharaoh's role as the shepherd of his people, guiding them and protecting them. Flail, nechacha, a whip-like instrument representing the pharaoh's punitive and disciplinary power, maintaining order and punishing wrongdoers. These two, often held together, were primary symbols of royal authority and divine governance. Was scepter, a long staff with a forked base and a stylized animal head at the top, symbolizing power, dominion, and well-being. Protective emblems. Uraeus, the upright cobra worn on the forehead of the pharaoh's crown or headdress. It symbolized Wajet, the cobra goddess of Lower Egypt, fiercely spitting fire at the pharaoh's enemies, representing divine protection. Vulture, Nigbet, often depicted alongside the uraeus, representing the vulture goddess of Upper Egypt, also offering protection. False beard, a stylized, plaited beard, often curled at the end, worn by pharaohs and sometimes goddesses, as a symbol of their divine status and connection to the gods, especially Osiris. It was ceremonial, not a personal fashion statement. Ankh, the key of life, a cross with a loop at the top symbolizing life, immortality, and divine blessing. Pharaohs were often depicted holding it or receiving it from deities. These symbols were not mere decoration. They were powerful visual statements, instantly recognizable by all Egyptians, that continually reinforced the pharaoh's unique position as a living god, the upholder of Maat, and the indispensable ruler of Egypt. They were carved into monumental reliefs, sculpted into royal statues, and found in funerary assemblages, ensuring that the message of divine kingship was perpetually broadcast and eternally preserved.
Part 2. The Age of Giants, Old Kingdom Splendor. Chapter 4. The Dawn of Stone, Imhotep, and the Step Pyramid. The first and second dynasties had established the unified state and the foundational ideology of divine kingship, primarily utilizing mud brick for their monumental structures. However, it was at the dawn of the third dynasty, under the visionary reign of King Djoser, that a true revolution in architecture and burial practice occurred. This era witnessed the transition from perishable mud brick to enduring stone, a monumental shift spearheaded by one of history's first known polymaths, Imhotep. The result was the magnificent step pyramid at Saqqara, not merely a tomb, but a sprawling funerary complex that irrevocably altered the course of Egyptian monumental architecture and symbolized the burgeoning power and sophistication of the Old Kingdom. 4.1. Djoser, the visionary pharaoh. Djoser, also transliterated as Nejereket, meaning divine of body, the first king of Egypt's third dynasty, ascended the throne around 2667 BCE. While much of his reign remains shrouded in the mists of antiquity, his impact on Egyptian civilization is undeniable and profound. He presided over an era of stability and increasing prosperity, leveraging the centralized authority established by his predecessors to initiate projects on an unprecedented scale. Djoser's reign marked a significant turning point, moving beyond the relative modesty of earlier royal tombs to an ambition that demanded a new scale of engineering and artistic expression. He was not content with the traditional mud brick mastaba. Instead, Djoser envisioned a funerary monument that would not only be larger and more complex, but also built of a material that would literally last for eternity: stone. This choice of material itself was revolutionary, symbolizing the permanence and divine nature of his kingship. His choice of Saqqara, near the burgeoning capital of Memphis, as the site for his eternal resting place, further underscored the strategic importance of this northern necropolis. Unlike the more remote ancestral burials at Abydos, the Saqqara complex was a visible declaration of royal power, easily accessible to the administrative elite, and a constant reminder of the pharaoh's enduring might at the heart of the unified land. Djoser's vision was not just for a tomb, but for an entire mortuary complex, a symbolic palace for his Ka, life force, that would mirror his earthly court, ensuring his perpetual reign in the afterlife. This holistic approach to funerary architecture was a hallmark of his reign and a testament to his visionary leadership. 4.3. Imhotep, architect, physician, and deified genius. Behind Djoser's grand vision stood an extraordinary individual whose brilliance left an indelible mark on history. His name, meaning "he who comes in peace," would become synonymous with genius, so much so that he was later deified as a god of medicine and healing, revered alongside Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing. Such posthumous deification is a rare honor, granted to only a handful of mortals in ancient Egypt, speaking volumes about his unparalleled impact. Imhotep served Djoser as his vizier, chief minister, and, crucially, as the royal architect. He was a polymath in the truest sense of the word, possessing expertise across multiple disciplines. Beyond his architectural feats, later traditions credit him as a physician of such skill that he was seen as the true founder of Egyptian medicine, with a reputation that persisted for thousands of years. Texts like the Edwin Smith Papyrus, an ancient medical treatise, are sometimes attributed to his original work or influence. His genius, however, is most vividly demonstrated at Saqqara. Imhotep was the conceptualizer and executor of the step pyramid complex, making him the first architect known by name in recorded history. His innovative contributions included the use of dressed stone. While stone had been used in small-scale construction before, Imhotep was the first to conceive of using precisely cut and fitted stone blocks on a monumental scale, replacing the traditional mud brick. Architectural experimentation. The step pyramid was not built in a single predetermined phase. Archaeological evidence reveals that Imhotep began with a traditional mastaba and progressively enlarged it, adding layers and expanding the perimeter, culminating in the stepped structure. This iterative design process highlights his inventive and experimental approach. Mastery of illusion. Within the complex, Imhotep used stone to mimic perishable materials like papyrus reeds, wood, and woven matting, transforming them into eternal forms. Stone columns were carved to resemble bundles of reeds, and walls were decorated to look like intricately woven hangings. This fusion of familiar forms with monumental, durable materials created a powerful symbolic language. Imhotep's unprecedented combination of intellectual and practical skills made him the ideal figure to translate Djoser's vision into enduring stone. He effectively invented the language of monumental stone architecture that would define Egypt for millennia, establishing the principles of design and construction that would culminate in the Great Pyramids of Giza. His legacy is not just the structures he built, but the entire architectural tradition he inspired. 4.3.3 The Step Pyramid at Saqqara, a revolution in architecture and burial. The Step Pyramid at Saqqara is not merely a tomb, it is the centerpiece of a vast and revolutionary funerary complex, a sprawling enclosure that served as Djoser's eternal residence and a perpetual stage for his divine rituals. Its construction, initiated around 2650 BCE, represents a quantum leap in architectural ambition and engineering capability, marking the definitive break from earlier mud brick constructions. The pyramid itself rises in 6 distinct steps, reaching a height of approximately 62 meters, or 204 feet. This stepped form is widely believed to symbolize a giant staircase or ramp that the deceased pharaoh's Ka could ascend to join the circumpolar stars, the imperishables, which were believed to be the eternal dwelling place of the gods and the righteous dead. It was a tangible link between the earthly realm and the celestial. However, the step pyramid was just one component of a much larger, meticulously planned complex. The entire area, roughly 15 hectares or 37 acres, was enclosed by a massive paneled limestone wall designed to mimic the walls of a royal palace. Inside this enclosure, Imhotep crafted an array of ceremonial buildings, courtyards, and simulated structures, all constructed from local limestone. The entrance colonnade, a magnificent hall with 40 engaged columns, meaning they were attached to the wall, not freestanding, designed to mimic bundles of reeds. The south court, a large open courtyard, likely used for ritual races and ceremonies, perhaps symbolizing the Hebsed festival, a jubilee ritual performed by the pharaoh to renew his vitality and reaffirm his rule. The Hebsed court, another long, narrow court lined with dummy chapels and shrines, meticulously carved to replicate their functional counterparts in mud brick and wood, forever preserving the rituals that ensured Djoser's eternal kingship. The South Tomb, a smaller, mastaba-like structure containing a burial chamber, possibly a symbolic burial or a tomb for the pharaoh's Ka. The Mortuary Temple, Situated on the north side of the pyramid, this was the heart of the daily cult for the deceased pharaoh, where offerings were made and rituals performed to sustain his spirit. The burial chamber. Deep beneath the pyramid, accessed via a complex network of tunnels and shafts, lay Djoser's granite-lined burial chamber, a fortress designed to protect the royal sarcophagus and its precious contents. The step pyramid complex was a revolutionary statement in stone. It was the first true monumental stone building in history, demonstrating a complete mastery of quarrying, transporting, cutting, and dressing stone on an industrial scale. It served as the architectural blueprint for all subsequent pyramid complexes, establishing the components of the mortuary temple, causeway, and valley temple that would be perfected in the Old Kingdom. More than just a tomb, it was a physical manifestation of divine kingship, an eternal palace and ritual arena that ensured Djoser's immortality and the perpetual stability of the Egyptian state. It was the audacious first step in Egypt's journey to becoming the civilization of colossal stone.